The studio lights were bright, almost too bright, the kind that made every expression sharper and every pause heavier. The cameras were already in place, the crew moving quickly as the audience settled into their seats. Tonight's guest on Reel Time with Bill Maher was Keanu Reeves, and there was an unmistakable buzz in the room. Keanu walked in from the side stage to warm applause, dressed simply, his presence calm but magnetic. He shook Bill's hand, gave a small nod to the audience, and sat down in the chair across from him. Bill smiled in his usual sharp, teasing way, leaning back like a man ready to spar. "Keanu," Bill began, "you've been talking a lot lately. About kindness, compassion, all that soft stuff. You're in Hollywood, you've seen how cutthroat the world is. Do you really believe kindness is a realistic solution to anything serious?" The audience gave a little laugh, sensing Bill was setting up for a jab. But Keanu didn't smile. Instead, he folded his hands in his lap and took a slow breath. "I don't think kindness solves everything," he said, his voice steady, "but I know nothing gets solved without it. I've seen what happens when people lose it. I've seen the damage that comes when we stop seeing each other as human beings." Bill tilted his head, his smile tight. "Sure, that's a nice sentiment, but don't you think it's a little naive? Politics, war, greed, those aren't going away because we all hold hands." Keanu's eyes stayed on Bill. "Naive would be pretending those things will get better if we keep treating each other like enemies. Kindness doesn't mean weakness. It means making the choice to care when it would be easier to turn away." The audience clapped softly, but Bill wasn't letting it go. "So, what you think if we're all just nicer to each other, the world suddenly becomes a better place?" Keanu leaned forward slightly, his voice lower now, each word deliberate. "No, I think if we stop being decent to each other, the world becomes worse than we can imagine. And maybe that's already happening." There was a pause just long enough for the room to feel heavier. Keanu glanced briefly toward the audience before continuing. "Years ago," he said, "I was walking late at night in Toronto. It was freezing, snow coming down hard. There was a man sitting on the curb without a coat. People passed him like he was invisible. I sat with him for a while. I didn't fix his life. I didn't change the world. But I made sure he knew, at least in that moment, that he mattered. That's the thing about kindness, you don't always see the result, but you change something every time you choose it." A few people in the audience wiped their eyes. Bill shifted in his chair, perhaps realizing the story had hit deeper than he expected. Then, from the third row, a woman suddenly stood up. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "Mr. Reeves, that night in Toronto, that was my father. He came home the next morning and told us a stranger had sat with him in the cold and treated him like a person. That stranger was you. He never forgot. He passed away last year, but he talked about you every Christmas." A hush fell over the room. Keanu turned toward her, his expression softening. "I remember him," he said quietly. "He told me about his daughter. I'm sorry for your loss." Bill looked between them, clearly caught off guard. "No. That's," but Keanu gently cut him off, his voice still calm. "Kindness isn't a theory, Bill. It's not a slogan. It's something you either choose to do or you don't, and the choice matters more than we realize." The audience erupted. In applause, not the polite kind, but the kind that carries emotion. The kind that lingers. What none of them knew in that moment was that this exchange, the quiet power of it, would not only dominate headlines, but set in motion a chain of events that neither Keanu nor Bill could have predicted. Asterisk, the applause from the audience still echoed in the studio when the cameras cut to commercial. Bill leaned back in his chair, tapping his cue cards lightly against his leg, his expression unreadable. Keanu stayed composed, offering a small nod to the crowd before taking a sip of water. The floor manager called for a reset. Makeup artists rushed in, adjusting Bill's collar and dabbing powder on his forehead, while Keanu waved off the brush. "I'm fine," he said softly. Bill glanced at him. "You know you just hijacked my show, right?" Keanu looked up, his tone calm.
Loud.
"I think I just answered your question." Bill smirked, but there was an edge to it. "You know, that kind of thing plays well with the audience, but the internet's going to cut it up. We'll make it look like you were preaching." Keanu didn't blink. Maybe, but if they cut it, they'll still be cutting kindness into the conversation. I can live with that. Commercial break ended. The cameras came back on. Bill moved into another topic, but his delivery was sharper, more guarded. He asked about Hollywood politics, about corruption in the industry, but Keanu didn't take the bait for sound bites. Every answer came back to the same theme: humanity, compassion, choosing dignity even in disagreement. After the taping, Keanu exited through the side door to avoid the crush of paparazzi at the front. The air outside was cool and the city was alive with the hum of traffic. He walked a few blocks before stopping at a quiet corner cafe. As he waited for his tea, a young man approached. He wore a faded hoodie and carried a small camera. "I saw what happened in there," the man said. "It's already online, uncut." Someone in the audience streamed it before the official version aired. Keanu raised an eyebrow. That was fast. The man sat down across from him without asking. "It's blowing up. But here's the thing you should know: they're already working on edits. They'll clip it to make you look smug, or like you didn't answer the question. They've done it to other guests before." Keanu stayed quiet for a moment, stirring his tea. "Why are you telling me this?" The man leaned forward. "Because I used to work on one of those editing teams. I quit after they butchered an interview. I filmed. They didn't just cut words. They changed context. You're going to be next?" Keanu studied him, weighing his words. "And what do you want me to do?" The man glanced around the cafe before speaking. "There's a place where they do most of the heavy lifting: post-production rooms, server hubs. If you want the truth to survive, you need to see it for yourself. I can get you in." Keanu sipped his tea, his eyes never leaving the man's. "You know, this could backfire on both of us." The man nodded. "Yeah. But some things are worth the risk." Keanu sat back, letting the thought settle. Outside, the city's neon lights reflected in the cafe window like fragments of a bigger picture. "Tell me where to meet you," he said at last, because deep down, he knew this wasn't just about an interview anymore. It was about the story people would be told, than the one they deserved to hear. The next evening, the city felt different. Maybe it was just Keanu's awareness sharpened, but every shadow seemed deeper. Every glance from a passerby seemed to linger a little longer. He walked with his hands in his jacket pockets, heading toward the meeting point the man from the cafe had given him. A service alley behind an old newspaper building that had been closed for years. The man was already there, leaning against a lamppost. He looked more restless than he had the day before, his hoodie pulled up, eyes darting toward the street every few seconds. "You came," he said quickly. "You asked?" Keanu replied. "What's your name?" "Daniel," the man answered. Glancing around again, "We don't have long. The place is active all night, but there's less foot traffic between deliveries. That's our window." "Active?" Keanu asked. Daniel started walking, and Keanu fell into step beside him. "Yeah, it's not some massive corporate skyscraper. It's a boring 2-story building with blinds drawn tight. You'd never think twice about it if you passed by. Inside, it's rows of editing bays and server racks. They get the raw footage from shows, late-night interviews, political debates, and then they make their corrections." "Corrections," Keanu repeated softly. Daniel nodded. "Sometimes it's just trimming pauses. Other times, they're rewriting the story completely. Tonight they're working on your interview with Bill Maher." They reached the edge of an industrial district. The building Daniel described stood between a shuttered print shop and a warehouse that smelled faintly of oil. The windows were dark, but strips of pale light leaked through gaps in the blinds. "Delivery entrance is around back," Daniel whispered. "We slip in when the driver goes inside." The alley was narrow, lined with dumpsters and crates. After a few tense minutes, a van pulled up. The driver got out, unloaded 2 boxes, and disappeared through a side door. "Now," Daniel said, moving fast. Inside, the air was cold and filled with the quiet hum of machines. They passed through a short hallway and stepped into a large room glowing with the light of multiple monitors. Editors sat with headphones on, clicking and dragging timelines filled with clips. Keanu froze when he saw one of the screens his own face from the interview. Paused mid-sentence. Next to it was the altered version. In the edit, his pauses were exaggerated, his tone flattened. Parts of his story about the man in the snow completely gone. Daniel gestured for him to follow to the far corner. There, a woman in her late 20s sat in front of 3 monitors, her focus intense. "This is Claire," Daniel said quietly. "She doesn't work for them. She works for us. Now, she's been feeding me info for months." Claire glanced up briefly. "I've got a copy of the raw feed and the manipulated version. I can transfer them to a secure drive in 10 minutes. After that, we get out." Keanu leaned closer to see her screen. "How many times have they done this?" "Hundreds," Claire said without hesitation. 2 actors, activists, even regular people caught in viral moments. They control how the public feels by controlling what they see. Keanu's jaw tightened. "Then let's make sure they see everything." But before Claire could start the transfer, voices echoed from the hallway. Footsteps, multiple pairs, moving quickly. Daniel's eyes narrowed. "We've been made." Claire unplugged her headset and shoved a small drive into her pocket. Got enough to prove it. They slipped into a side corridor, hearts pounding, the footsteps behind them growing louder. By the time they reached the back door, a shadow blocked the exit. A tall man in a dark coat stood there, his expression unreadable. "You're not supposed to be here," he said. Keanu met his gaze, calm but unyielding. "Maybe not, but people are supposed to know the truth." The man tilted his head slightly, then stepped aside without a word. They didn't slow down until they were 2 blocks away, the night air sharp in their lungs. "Why did he let us go?" Claire asked. Daniel glanced over his shoulder. "'Cause now they want to see what we'll do next." Asterisk. They didn't stop moving until they reached an underground parking garage that Daniel used as a safe drop point. The air inside was damp and smelled faintly of oil and concrete. Dim yellow lights buzzed overhead, casting long shadows across the empty spaces. Claire leaned against a pillar, catching her breath, one hand gripping the small drive in her pocket. "I've got the files," she said. "Both the raw and the edited versions, everything they were working on tonight." Daniel nodded, scanning the garage for signs of movement. "Good, but that also means they know exactly what we took. They'll be tracking for us now." Keanu stayed quiet, his eyes on the far corner of the garage. "They didn't stop us tonight. The man at the door could have, but he didn't." Frowned. "Why let us walk out with this?" Because Keanu said slowly, "It's not just about stopping us. It's about controlling the way we use it. If they can predict our next move, they can twist it before it even reaches people." Daniel pulled out an old flip phone, flipping it open with a snap. "Then we can't use the obvious channels. No direct uploads, no public leaks without a plan. We need a platform that's fast, independent, and hard to shut down." Claire smirked faintly. "I might know someone. It's an independent livestream host with a global audience. They've been looking for proof of this kind of manipulation for years. If we give them this, it goes everywhere at once." "How long to set it up?" Keanu asked. 2 days, she said. "They'll need to prep the servers for a surge. Once it's out, they can't take it down without taking the whole platform offline." Daniel stepped forward. "But we have to be ready for blowback. They'll hit us with counter-narratives within hours. Fake fact checks, bot swarms, maybe even deep fakes to discredit us." Keanu's gaze shifted toward the ramp leading out of the garage. "Then we don't just show the files. We show the process, how they cut, why they cut, and what those cuts change in the minds of people watching." Claire nodded. "If we do that, even if they try to spin it, people will have seen how it's done. They'll start spotting it elsewhere." Daniel closed the flip phone and slipped it back into his jacket. "We'll meet at the studio the night of the broadcast. Until then, we split up. Keep moving. No patterns." As they walked toward the exit, Keanu glanced at the empty concrete walls and thought about the man who had stepped aside at the editing facility. There had been no fear in his eyes, no hesitation, just a strange, measured interest outside. The city's neon lights reflected. On the wet pavement, Claire went one way, Daniel another, leaving Keanu alone under the buzzing street lamp. As he started down the sidewalk, a voice came from the shadows. 2 days, it said. Make them count. Keanu turned, but the street was empty. 2 nights later, the air inside the independent studio was thick with tension. It wasn't the polished shine of a corporate broadcast center, just a converted loft with exposed brick walls, mismatched chairs, and cables snaking across the floor. But the equipment was real, and so was the audience waiting online. Claire sat at the control desk, her fingers moving quickly over the keyboard. On one monitor, the files from the editing facility were lined up in sequence raw footage. First, then the manipulated versions. On another, the live chat was already scrolling. Thousands of viewers logging in from all over the world. Daniel paced by the door, his phone in hand, glancing outside every few minutes. Traffic on the street's been light, he muttered. But don't get comfortable. If they want to stop this, they won't knock on the door, they'll pull the plug. Keanu sat across from the main camera, calm but focused. Then we make sure it's impossible to pull without people noticing. Once this starts, we don't pause, we don't break. We keep talking until every second of footage is out there. The host, a wiry man named Victor with a quick smile, adjusted his headset. We're live in 60 seconds. When the light turns red, it's all yours. The countdown began. Claire's hands hovered over the controls. Daniel checked the street. One last time. Keanu closed his eyes for a moment, breathing in slowly, centering himself. At 0, the red light blinked on. Victor introduced him briefly, then leaned back. You've seen the viral clips from my appearance on Real Time, Keanu began, looking straight into the lens. But what you saw wasn't what happened. Tonight, you'll see the full truth. You'll see how it was changed before it reached you. Claire hit play. The first video rolled, the uncut footage of Keanu's kindness story with Bill Maher, exactly as it had happened. No awkward pauses, no missing lines, just the quiet, steady delivery that had silenced the audience that night. Then the edited version played. The difference was shocking. Whole sections removed, tone flattened, context stripped away. The live chat exploded. Wow, they butchered it. This is night and day. How many other interviews have they done this? 2, Keanu continued. What you just saw isn't a mistake. It's not about trimming for time, it's about changing how you feel about a moment. And they've been doing it for years. The next clip showed the inside of the editing facility monitors with split-screen footage, editors making timeline. Cuts, on-screen notes reading things like remove empathy section and increase perceived hesitation. Daniel, still watching the street, stiffened. Black SUV, just parked across the road. Claire didn't look up. We're halfway through the files. Give me 4 more minutes. The final clip CUDA sequence of 3 separate public figures, each shown uncut and then altered. There. Words twisted into something they'd never said. As the last edit rolled, the studio lights flickered. The feed wavered for a heartbeat, then steadied. Claire's voice was tight. They're trying to jam the connection. Backup servers kicking in. Keanu leaned forward, his voice firm. If you're watching this, don't just share it. Save it. Download it. Send it to people who think this doesn't happen. The truth can't survive if it stays in one place. The upload bar on Claire's side screen hit 100%. It's done, she said. Mirrored on servers worldwide. Even if they kill the feed, it's already out there. Outside, the SUVs. Engine revved, then slowly pulled away. Victor closed the stream with a quick thank you. But in the silence that followed, no one in the room relaxed. They all knew what came next. Daniel broke it first. Now they'll stop playing nice. Keanu met his eyes. Good. That means they're scared. Asterisk the morning after the livestream, the city woke to a storm not of rain, but of headlines. Hashtags and endless video clips. Some outlets called it the most important media leak of the decade. Others dismissed it as a stunt, spinning the footage into conspiracy theory territory. The truth was spreading, but so was the counterattack. In the small loft studio, Keanu, Claire, and Daniel sat around an old wooden table, the smell of stale coffee lingering in the air. Claire's laptop screen showed a map dotted with red point servers hosting the footage. Independent channels replaying the stream, new uploads popping up every hour. "We're in over 20 countries already," Claire said. "It's everywhere, but..." She hesitated, scrolling through another feed. "They've launched bots to bury it under fake stories. Every time someone searches for the clip, they're getting hit with debunked videos." Daniel leaned back in his chair, rubbing his eyes. "That's their next move. Don't erase it. Just bury it so deep no one can find it." Keanu's gaze was steady. "Then we go to the people directly. No algorithms, no filters. We build a network they can't choke." He stepped to the window, looking out at the quiet street below. "When I was on Bill's show, he asked if kindness could fix anything. This isn't just about kindness. It's about connection. If people can see through one lie, they'll start looking for the next, and the next." Claire turned in her chair. "We've already got volunteers sending in examples. Real ones. If we can show a pattern, it won't matter how many fake headlines they throw at us." Daniel's phone buzzed on the table. He glanced at it and frowned. "We've got company. Black SUV again. Parked at the end of the block." Claire closed her laptop, sliding it into her bag. "Then we move. We've got what we need here." They left the loft by the back stairs, slipping into the narrow alleys behind the building. Keanu led them through the side streets, avoiding open intersections until they reached a crowded market as they blended with the shoppers. A man stepped out from behind a stall. It was the tall figure from the editing facility's back door, one who'd let them leave. "You've made them nervous," he said, his voice low. "But you've also made them curious. They want to know how far you'll go." Keanu studied him. "And you? What do you want?" The man gave a small, almost imperceptible smile. "I want to see if you're ready for what comes next." Without another word, he melted back into the crowd. They didn't follow. Instead, they moved on, each of them carrying the weight of what they'd just heard. By nightfall, they were in a safe apartment above a closed bakery, screens lit up with messages from strangers all over the world. People were organizing, sharing the footage in private groups, burning it to DVDs, translating it into other languages. Claire set her laptop on the table. "This isn't just our fight anymore." Keanu looked at the flickering map of activity, the red dots spreading like a living thing. "Good," he said quietly, "because they can't shut down everyone." Outside, somewhere in the dark, the SUV still watched. But this time, Keanu didn't see it as a threat. It was proof they were making a dent, proof they'd forced the truth into the light, and proof that the real battle was only just beginning.